Hello all, welcome to the show. I'm Gus Gagliardi and this is Firecode Tech. On Firecode Tech, we interview fire protection professionals from all different careers and backgrounds in order to provide insight and a resource for those in the field. My goal is to help you become a more informed fire protection professional. Firecode Tech has interviews with engineers and researchers, fire marshals, and insurance professionals, and highlights topics like codes and standards, engineering systems, professional development, and trending topics in the industry. So if you're someone who wants to know more about fire protection or the fascinating stories of those who are in the field, you're in the right place. Hello all, welcome to episode 42 of Firecode Tech. On this episode, we're talking to Zach Green. Zachary is an entrepreneur in the fire and life safety space. Speaking with Zach, we get into his origin story, which centers around his time in the fire service and in the military. We dive into Zach's book, The Warrior Entrepreneur. In the episode, we talk about some of the key takeaways and tips for those who want to take on the warrior mindset that is needed to be successful as somebody who is in business for themselves. Join us for key takeaways like how to cultivate the mental steadfastness that's required to endure some of the hardships of entrepreneurship and the mindset and strengths of those who have been successful in entrepreneurial and professional endeavors. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and follow us on social media. Oh, and if you could do me a huge favor, go and give us a 5-star rate and review on Apple Podcasts. Hello, Zach. Good morning. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Firecode Tech.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be on with you today.
Awesome. Well, I always enjoy starting the podcast episodes with giving the listeners a little bit about your background and how you found fire and life safety. But for you, if you could give some exposition about your origin story of your career.
Certainly. I served in the United States Marine Corps back in the early 90s. Got out in about 99, and about 2 years later, September 11th happened. A day that affected all of us very deeply. But for me, I really had a lot of survivor's guilt. I felt bad that I was in the Marine Corps infantry and did all that work, and I never got a chance to take the fight to the enemy, if you will. So I joined our local volunteer fire department, and it was a great way to give back to the community and still kind of stay in the fight because the new front lines of the battlefields are no longer in a far off distant land. They're here in our backyard. And during that time in the fire service, I developed a photoluminescent technology for firefighters to see each other in the dark. And over about a 10-year time period, literally turned the company from the trunk of my car into about a $30 million operation.
Wow, that's awesome. Excellent. Well, I'd like to, dive a little bit deeper into your time in the fire service. Would you just talk to me a little bit about your time in the fire service and kind of how that, and also maybe a little bit more about your time in the military and how that's kind of shaped you in your pursuits today?
Certainly. In the Marine Corps, I was originally trained for artillery, fire direction controlman. My job was to do all the mathematical and scientific calculations to get what we call rounds on target. I spent 3 months going to various different schools, from survey school to meteorology school to learning about different types of muzzle velocities and all this really amazing trigonometry. I never thought I'd use my math stuff in high school. And in typical Marine Corps wisdom, they then assigned me to a infantry unit and had me do the same job for mortars, which I pretty much could teach you how to do on the back of a napkin in about 10 minutes. I was assigned to a cold weather infantry unit. Our job, again, keep in mind, this was before September 11th, was if the Russians were to roll through the northern flank of Norway, we would kind of be, for lack of better words, the road bumps. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I did both enlisted, Paris Island, and then I went through the officer candidate program. As I was getting close to getting my commission, I realized, I just didn't want to do this anymore. The Marine Corps was in an attrition mode, as all the branches were under Clinton's leadership. And also, there was no combat deployment. So I got out. Now, what can I use of those skills out in the real world? Obviously, setting up artillery firing tables and doing infantry operations is probably going to get me arrested if I do those things out in the civilian world. But it was those intangibles: grit, teamwork, confidence, mission accomplishment. Those were all the things that really prepared me as I got into my job as a volunteer firefighter, and ultimately working through climbing the corporate ladder at my full time job, which was with Eli Lilly.
Awesome. Well, I've always kind of sensed a similar um, disposition from firefighters and military personnel. Um, this kind of stoic, unflappable, just like look in the eyes of an individual who's been in the either kind of paramilitary structure of the fire service, or the military structure of serving. Yeah, I don't know. I just always thought that was interesting. Do you have any thoughts on why these two are so similar?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they definitely attract the same individuals. I say in the Marine Corps, we have a really great ability of taking things that are really fun and making them as miserable as possible. And in the fire service, we have a great job of taking things that are miserable and making it as fun as possible. I think the common thread with all these are these warrior attributes, and those are service above self, the team above the individual, and mission accomplishment above everything. We always say in the fire service, we can't dial 912 after you dial 911. When we show up, we have to solve the mission. And the same thing goes with that mindset in the military also. And that's why I think you see a lot of that transferable skills. And in my recent book, The Warrior Entrepreneur, I really dive deeply into that. And what is it that makes a warrior a warrior? You don't have to be a Marine or a firefighter. You could literally be a single mom that's trying to raise two or three kids and working two or three jobs, and it's that undying thirst and um, dedication to accomplishing your mission, no matter what it is. And also a very unique attribute, and that is using conflict, resistance, and adversity to help shape you, to prepare you for your ultimate crucible, which always ends up happening at some point in time in your life. Sometimes you can have multiple crucibles, and that is usually the crisis in your life when everything kind of falls apart. It could be a divorce, it could be death of a family member, it could be a drug, alcohol, or addiction. In my case, it was thinking my business was going to go bankrupt. We were running out of money. And when you're in that crucible, you have two options. One option is to succumb to the abyss. If you spend too much time near that abyss, which stands for failure, death, suicide, destruction, giving up, eventually that abyss will consume you. The philosopher Nietzsche once said, if you stare long enough into the abyss, eventually the abyss will stare back. And that's basically what that means. But the warrior, again, has to have that resistance, has to have those intangible skills we just talked about to not get through their crucible, but to conquer their crucible. And the only way they can do that is to transform and change. Because if you don't change after you conquer your crucible, you're going to get right back into that area. And we could certainly talk later on about some of the changes that I made and some of the changes that I've witnessed during the research for my book about how warriors are able to conquer those different crucibles that they end up having in their life.
Yeah, definitely. I love all that. That's great stuff. I have heard this sentiment of times from firefighters, about on people's worst day that they are have the fire service has to show up and give their all because people don't have a choice of who shows up. So that was always very impactful for me. But
And we
yeah, I
always
just
say that we've got to be on our best when you're at your worst.
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the book now, but let's. I mean, you answered kind of one of my first thoughts, but maybe you could speak a little bit more about it, which is, who is the book for? I think it obviously applies to people who have been in the military and people who have, been in the fire service, but maybe speak more broadly to the appeal of the book that you've written, The Warrior Entrepreneur, and who can, take value from it.
So, yeah, thank you for asking. I mean, The book is really for anybody that wants to conquer their crucibles in their life. Now, I will tell you, when I originally wrote the book, it was designed just for entrepreneurs, and the reason I did that is I saw so many similarities between my warrior journey in the military and fire service and as an entrepreneur. And those journeys were, number one, it's tough. You know, you got to have a lot of grit. Number two, you have to be able to accomplish the mission. The only way an entrepreneur can fail is to give up. Now, quitting is the easy thing to do. It's sticking it out and making it through all those tough, challenging times is where the real rubber meets the road, so to speak. So as the book started to develop, and as I started doing research on the fight or flight systems, sympathetic, parasympathetic systems within your body, I started to research several things about the difference between college athletes and non-college athletes, between the stressors that come in the military and the first responder world. Um, and I realized they all had that common thread that theme that goes all the way back to Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey, and that is, as the hero starts to develop and they have to get tested, they have to be tried, and that trial and testing is really what develops you. Iron sharpens iron is another way of looking at that, and then prepare you for that battle, your crucible, and then that transformation and change to get through that crucible. And when you look at it in that light, the reality is it could be the again, the mom that's working two jobs just try to get their kid through school. It could be that kid that's the first person in his family to go to college, but they got to work two jobs and do all this extra stuff while the other kids are out partying on the weekends. It could be that Navy SEAL that's trying to get the inspiration to make it through buds. It could be the entrepreneur that has just failed time and time again, but continue to come out there and give it their all and try to figure out how to solve that problem. So I guess the short answer to your short question is it's for anybody that wants to accomplish greatness in their life and overcome obstacles.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I mean, I was drawn to you and your book. You reached out to me, but I was looking into your book and your profile, and I was really drawn because I think that whether you are somebody who owns their own business or not, the entrepreneurial mindset is the mindset that helps people be successful in business and successful in life. This kind of non-acceptance of the status quo, and to be a bit riskier and have that grit and determination is something that serves anybody with a professional career. So um, that's one of the main through lines of this podcast is kind of self betterment, usually in regards to a little bit more fire and life safety, but self betterment and kind of what are the tools and tactics to have some of that self improvement. So I think that's a great line of discussion about how the book is versatile and those who could gain benefit out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit more. I love this idea of, and I think you touched on a little bit this grit, this determination, this kind of um, ability to push through difficult tasks. I think that it's hard as an entrepreneur. Sometimes you don't know. There's uncertainty. There's risk. It's sometimes hard to know if you're doing the right thing. And then as a professional too, especially for people early on, to have that confidence, to have that ability to know that you're putting in the work and you're going in the right direction. But it seems like that's a theme in the book. I'd love to hear a bit more about that from you, if you would.
Certainly. So yeah, you definitely bring up some really, really great points there. I think the first thing that you look at if you decide you do want to take that entrepreneurial journey is, what is the problem you're solving? I think when you look at the fire code, every single thing in the fire code is solving a problem. A lot of them were the result of accidents that happened or tragedies or something along those lines. I grew up in the Cincinnati area, and the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire, which was one of the most lethal fires in our country's history, developed a lot of different codes that came out of that. Those were lots of problems that were solved. In my case, the problem that I solved was I got lost in a fire, and I wanted to create a product that was going to help reduce disorientation and increase accountability in the fire service. So when you look at, those traits, the intangibles, and I guess I could sum them up in one word: grit. Being an entrepreneur is exceptionally difficult. When you're a firefighter, when you're in the military, there's a handbook. There's literally decades, if not centuries, of doctrine and lessons that we've learned on how to fight that enemy, whatever that enemy could be. There is a team, there is equipment, there are tools, and they're all paid for by the government. So you don't really have to spend money out of your own pocket. When you get to the entrepreneur world, it's completely different. You have, first of all, you usually don't have any money. Second of all, there is no handbook. Third of all, you don't usually have a team. It usually starts with one, maybe two people out of the trunk of the car or garage or some area like that. And then the challenges just start to become absolutely overwhelming. So it's those intangibles that we need to conquer those challenges. Now, specifically, what do you need to be an entrepreneur? What are the things? And I kind of boiled it down to three things. One is you solve a problem in a unique and elegant way. Two, you have to have an unfair competitive business advantage. I didn't say illegal. I didn't say unethical. I said unfair. Because we are small and a startup, you don't have the resources and the manpower to compete against some of these larger companies that are out there. So you have to have an angle. What is that unfair advantage? In my case, my unfair advantage was I decided if I'm going to be selling to my brother and sister firefighters, I don't want to outsource my sales team to some big sales distribution company that hasn't felt the heat of a fire and gone through the disorientation that occurs when you're crawling down a dark, smoky hallway. I wanted someone that had been there and done that. So my competitive advantage is I hired only fellow firefighters on my sales team that I built up to about 400 across the country. And as the other companies would come in and try to sell products, they didn't have that brotherhood, and we all know in the fire service it's you're either a firefighter or you're not. It's real simple. It's very binary. Another advantage you could have is maybe you develop some type of coffee cup and you're able to negotiate a special deal with Starbucks where they're going to only use your special coffee cup and nobody else's. That's a great competitive advantage. And then the third one, which always screws up entrepreneurs, and especially with the entrepreneurs that I've met in the fire service, I've really yet to meet one that's figured out this third one, and that is sales, marketing, distribution. Going to a trade show here and there, some out of the trunk of your yard, that's fine. That's great. I did that early on. But to really get to that next level, you need great sales, marketing, distribution. If you've got the greatest product in the world and nobody knows about it and they don't know how to buy it and there's no system in place to manage those orders, you're not going to be very successful. So really focus on how people get it and how they buy it and how they distribute it, because at the end of the day, you can have a really bad product, but if you've got good sales and marketing and distribution behind it, you're going to do pretty well. Conversely, you can have a pretty great product, not have good sales and marketing distribution, and you're not going to do well. So it's one of those things where it all comes down to how people find it and how they can buy it.
Wow, that's some great tips there. I love the point about sales, marketing, and distribution because, as somebody who runs a podcast, it's literally 100% marketing and distribution. I would tell people if they wanted to get into the podcasting business, I'd say, how do you feel about posting on social media? Because if you don't have the determination to post on every social media you can every week, and then you're not into that sort of thing, then you're probably not going to make it because that distribution piece, I think, in probably many businesses is huge, huge for, it appears to me that any kind of startup or young company, that ability to build a distribution network and kind of facilitate their ideas and their value is a huge,
And the
huge
beauty is,
challenge.
we're living in the absolute best time on planet Earth's history to be an entrepreneur. The ability to build those social media connections that we never had that opportunity, not even 2 years ago before the pandemic. Since the pandemic, it's gotten even better. But my kid has already an amazing social network because he doesn't go outside and play kick the can and stickball like I used to do when I was growing up, because the kids are playing online now. So it starts with that community. Build that community up, and then start to distribute your content out there. Well, if you just have the content and no community, I would tell you to pause on getting your content out there until you really started to build up a following in the community, and then do it.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. It's a hard thing to do to build that community, but the community kind of has its own momentum. So it's really kind of a self fulfilling prophecy. You know, if you build that distribution stream, whether it's for a podcast or for a business, kind of that churning incoming and outcoming of content or sales items, then you'll, I don't know. I just
Absolutely.
think this kind
Great
of builds
point.
off of itself.
Absolutely.
Um, Another theme it seems like in the book Warrior Entrepreneurship is some of these mental health items. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that because I think it's so important in today's day and age for people to have as many tools as they can around the subject.
Certainly. So the mind and the body are connected. We spend a lot of time in the military training our body, honing our body. But if you neglect your mind, the body really doesn't do anything. I mean, the body is basically the output of what the mind tells you to do. Um, One thing that we have done a great job in the last couple of years is recognizing the horrible problem we have in the military and even in the fire service with suicide and PTSD and those issues, and how to identify them and how to make sure we have a space that people feel comfortable to share that vulnerability, because we know that in the military and in the police and fire service, sometimes when you raise your hand and say I need help, it can be career limiting. So we've done a great job of at least addressing those, because we weren't almost doing anything 20 years ago. However, we got a long way to go. In the military, there was a study done where they asked people if they felt stressed and if they felt emotionally, challenges when it came around PTSD and those type of issues. The numbers came back, I think, were artificially low. They came back at 17%. I do think that number has got to be larger. Let's say that number is twice that amount. Who knows? But it's interesting because that same questionnaire was asked of entrepreneurs, and it was over 70%. Yet nobody talks about the suicide rate in entrepreneurship. Nobody talks about the depression. Nobody talks about the unbelievable stress it is when you have to go bankrupt or restructure your business or go through those type of things. So there's quite a few things we can do to help address that. The first one is getting a good night's sleep. That's very difficult as an entrepreneur, because the reality is nobody as an entrepreneur gets an opportunity to sleep 8 hours. You sometimes I had times where I spent, literally 20 hours in a day in the office or on the air in the airplane and traveling around. Next one is your physical and your emotional are connected. Exercise, get out there and move. The body has an amazing way of releasing endorphins and ways to help reduce stress by the exercise. Another thing that's becoming more and more popular now is mindfulness. It could be something as simple as just taking a walk in a beautiful park or on the beach or some area and just being, not focusing on business, not focusing, turning your phone off, which I always have a really hard time doing, and just being present. There's a lot of other great mindfulness around meditation. I actually did transcendental meditation for a couple of years, and it literally was a game changer. It was just 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening. Just get a chance to kind of clear your mind out. The other thing is, we are naturally people that like to be around other people, especially when you're an entrepreneur, because you've got that outgoing personality. Be around other people. Take times to disconnect from work, and especially other entrepreneurs, where you can share stories and you can realize that you're not alone, and develop that network and that community like you and I just talked about around distribution. But build that entrepreneur community, so if you are struggling or you're having a bad day and you call someone up and say, hey man, let's go grab a drink, or let's just have a chat on the phone, or let's go for a walk, or something along those lines. Because as we talk about in the framework of the warrior's journey, when you're in that crucible, it is the biggest crisis of your life. It is very difficult. At the bottom of that crucible is the abyss. And if you spend too much time in that abyss, it will consume you. We saw the horrible example of what happened with Kate Spade, arguably one of our nation's great entrepreneurs, amazing fashion icon, but didn't go through what she needed to go through to address that depression and all that stress that come along with it. She ultimately succumbed to suicide. Then we look at someone else, Elon Musk. Elon Musk has battled a tremendous amount of depression and challenges with emotional mental health, but he worked on tools and things to help get through that and to be able to fight through those demons and get past that crucible.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love that throughout your, interview so far, you've had concrete examples of how to deal with some of these challenges, and that it's not just fluff or this kind of. Sometimes you can run into the self-help space of people who don't want to offer real solutions; they just want to talk about the problem. So, I love that you talked about meditation and just kind of mental and emotional health. I think that's all so important. I think uh, you know, interestingly enough, the mental hurdles that you go through as a professional are the biggest ones. If you can't convince yourself to send an email because you're worried about the response, then you're never going to be able to progress as a professional. So I think that how this ties back to being effective is it's kind of all encompassing, and being successful is being able to conquer that mental.
Absolutely. The battles start with the battle of the mind before you can battle the opponent or the environment around you.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you've given some awesome advice so far for people who want to be an entrepreneur, and even more specifically for people who are in fire and life safety and want to be an entrepreneur. But I wanted to pick your brain for any other piece of advice for somebody who maybe can't get themselves off the edge of wanting to start their business idea, or maybe in that vein of advice.
So the first advice I give, and I do I'm really privileged to speak at a lot of different universities, and there's been a really large increase in entrepreneurial programs, which I've got mixed feelings on. I don't know if that's a good thing or not a good thing. And the reason I say that is you're too young. You don't have enough experience if you start this when you're in your 20s, period. I don't care what anyone says. You need life experiences. In my case, having experiences as a firefighter, having experiences spending close to 20 years in corporate America before I started my own business. Soak up every single bit of information you can. If you're on the fire service, attend every single leadership training event you can attend. Try to get extra type of involvements, because you're doing it on their dime. When I worked at Eli Lilly, I got certified to be Lean Six Sigma. That would have been tens of thousands of dollars, if not more than that, if I had to pay for that on my own pocket. I went through John Maxwell's different leadership programs. Tremendous opportunity. And as I went through all that, not only was I able to give a lot of that benefit back to Eli Lilly when I was working there, but I also was able to carry that with me forward as I started my own ventures. The other thing is, and this is probably the top advice for firefighters, is when you come up with a great idea, the natural response is to protect it and make sure nobody finds out about it. And so what ends up happening, you either get a patent, which is tremendously expensive. And by the way, patents aren't even worth the paper they're written on, if unless you have about $1 million assigned to that patent, because patents only work if you defend them. And if you're not willing to defend them, why would you even have one? With the exception of one area, and that is if you're creating a product, you want to get a patent, and then you want to sell that patent to a larger company to have them potentially defend it, then yes, I agree with it. That's on one area. But this is what happens. You get some firefighter develops a great idea. He starts thinking about it, and he's so scared to tell anybody else because they're going to copy it. And as a result, nobody finds out about it. Now, as much as firefighters are our brothers and we love them, a firefighter will steal your idea in a New York minute. I remember the story sitting down at my firehouse where this guy's talking about how he started his own lawn care company and he bought this lawnmower and how much he's making. And within like a week or two, the two other firefighters listened to him. They bought a lawnmower and they started going after his clients and trying to find everything else that's out there. I get it. When I started my company, Foxfire and the fire service, two guys literally ripped off every single thing I'm doing to the point where they were even copying my logo and my colors and everything else. I used to get really upset about that, but the reality is, don't. First of all, it's flattering. Second of all, it tells you there is a business there. But third of all, is I'm going to spend my time, energy on developing new product and innovative products and focusing on the distribution and not trying to fight somebody else. Because again, if you can stay one step ahead of them, if you can be okay with the fact that yeah, somebody may steal your idea, but the benefit of you getting that idea out there and distributing it and talking to people far outweighs the risk that you would have of somebody stealing your idea. Spend the money you would have spent on that patent on Facebook targeted ads. I guarantee you'll make your money back tenfold.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think there's a scarcity mindset and then like a growth mindset, and people who are worried about, oh, there's only so much space. And I know that that competitive advantage is important, that you talked about earlier, but so many times I think people get so tied up in worrying about getting outpaced or somebody else being in the space, and they never really give it a chance. They don't, in reality, I think there's a lot more bandwidth than people are aware of usually. Especially I can speak for, podcasts is really what I'm kind of drawing my experience from. But yeah, I think that's great tips for people who want to get into creating a business. So I want to circle back to, we've hinted a couple times at LumAware, but I want to talk more about the arc of your story with LumAware. So you get this idea to uh, create, I don't know what the technical word is for lighting from the absorption of light from the
Yep.
ceiling lights.
Photoluminescent technology.
Photoluminescence technology. Yeah. I was trying to talk to somebody the other day about it and I kept saying intumescence and I was like, I know that's not right. That's for fire separations. But yeah, would talk to me more about like the incipient stages of this idea to this boots on the ground, trying to sell. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, so it's a common problem we've had literally back to caveman time, and that is what happens when it gets dark out. You get disoriented, you can't find your way around. And I wanted to solve that. And so I remember after I got lost in a fire very early on in my career, a week or two later, I was watching a special on 9/11, and they were talking about how they had this incredible photoluminescent technology in the stairwells of the World Trade Towers. It was actually installed after the '93 truck bombing, where New York fire and building code officials got together and said, "Hey, we need to create something else in the code that's going to help people in case the power goes out, in case the generators and the backup plans fail." Because we all know there's a guy named Murphy. He's got a law of physics, and it's pretty accurate. And that is anything that can go wrong will go wrong at the worst time. So they started to put that in the code, Building Code 26 in New York City. September 11th occurs. We talk a lot about the people that died that day, but there was over 17,000 people that got out of those towers before they ultimately came down. Six different times during the 9/11 Commission report, they specifically talked about this photoluminescent technology helping people find their way out of the World Trade Towers. So as a result of that, it started to infiltrate into the NFPA, the IBC, the IFC codes that are out there. So I took that same technology and I knew that I wanted to be a player in that space, but I had to have that competitive advantage, which I didn't have early on. And so I just focused exclusively on firefighter protective products, helmet bands, wraps, paints, resins, shirts, all these different types of things. And the goal there was to build my brand, build my community. And as I started to sell these products out of the trunk of my car, I literally made 5,000 bucks over about a 6 month time period. But then I ended up going to FDIC, as we all know, one of the largest firefighter trade show in the United States. And in 3 days, we sold close to $100,000 of product. Now the problem is I didn't have any money to buy the raw materials. I had no way to fill those orders. I had no distribution to get those out. I had no way to set up a collection system to get paid on all those type of things. And people are like, Zach, you got to stop taking these orders. I'm like, no, I'm a Marine. We overcome, we adapt, we figure things out, we improvise. And that's what I did. So I ended up raiding my 401k. I pulled out money out of my um, uh, savings. I maxed out credit cards. I was able to get most of those orders out, but then I was starting to run out of money again. So I did the next thing, which was went to venture capital and raised a couple $1 million in venture capital financing. However, when you raise venture capital financing, they want to look at what's the total available market, what's the maximum that's out there, and the maximum total available market in the fire service really isn't that big. There's about 1.2 million firefighters in the U.S., about 31,000 different departments. So I needed something else there to help sweeten the pot to get these investors to invest. And what I looked at was something we see every day and we don't even realize it. And it's exit signs. There's 100 million exit signs in the United States. They all need batteries. They need light bulbs. They need electricity. And there's a section in the code there that says you don't necessarily have to have an electrified exit sign. What you do need to require, though, is that it's visible for at least 90 minutes when the power goes off. And that's what I focused on. I was able to get our glow to glow bright enough and long enough that it met that standard. And before you know it, we landed a pretty big opportunity with Kroger's. We then landed a monster opportunity with Home Depot. Started to get some other really, really large companies, both as customers, and then eventually Home Depot started to carry it themselves and sell the exit signs and safety products. We also have a total portfolio of products to help you get into code compliance with the stairwells, ranging from a liquid stair nosing product that goes on the leading edge of the step to tapes on the handrails, and really kind of building that out. So that's kind of what the arch and that journey has been, is now really focusing with what LumAware's focus on. We still do a ton of business on our Foxfire brand, which is our firefighter brand, but because we do so much on the LumAware side, over 25 million, close to 30 million, and we're over 30 million if you include the sales that we've done in the firefighter products. That really has been the main focus of the company. But for me, we'll always be a company of by firefighters, for firefighters, and those we protect.
That's awesome. Man, it's incredible to hear about your effectively Shark Tank moment looking at the market size and what the market would bear for the product that you're thinking of. I think that's pretty fascinating to hear about.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to, discuss a little bit about the perspective, and it's something that we've talked about a little bit off air, but, what was it like going from somebody who was an individual contributor to the CEO of a business that was making millions of dollars? I think that that is quite a transformation, and I'd love to hear more about that.
It was quite a transformation. It's a transformation I don't think I did a really great job at, to be perfectly honest. I think being a founder and an entrepreneur is a very different set of skills than being a CEO or president of a small to mid-sized company. I did an exceptionally good job of being a CEO of a startup company where my focus was more on vision, wasn't really focused on profit. It was just simply about getting the name out there and being the cheerleader and the evangelist for this technology. But what you see with a lot of small businesses as they transfer from a startup to a small business is that the CEO and founder usually holds the company back from maximizing its potential. And the reason why is based off of this incredible concept that Gino Wickman came up with in his book, Rocket Fuel. And it talks about you need an integrator and a visionary, and it's rare that those people are in those same categories. If you're a fan of psychology, Carl Jung talks about people are thinkers or feelers. People are, some people are number motivated. Some people are visually motivated. It's hard to have both of those be the same. Actually, he says you can't be the same. You can't be a thinker and a feeler. You can have little bits of each, but you can't have equal amounts of each. And so, as the visionary, my job is to constantly be innovating, is to be the cheerleader for my company, the spokesman for the company, to get out there and talk to people and come up with new ideas. And as a result of that, I was neglecting the finances. I was getting to the point where I was so paranoid with my emails because there were so many bad emails. I just figured, hey, I'll just stop checking emails. Not really a good thing to do. And importantly, not very courageous. One of those warrior attributes is courage. You have to have that. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's being scared and then pushing through that. So when I got to my crucible where we thought we were running out of money, and we were, I mean, we were ready to have to reorganize the company in bankruptcy. I was probably going to lose my house in foreclosure. It was a bad situation. And that was my crucible. And my transformation that I made was stepping down as CEO and bringing in a new CEO. And that's when the company really, really flourished. So that's something I think it's really important for people to know is starting a company is very, very different than running a company. It requires a completely different set of skills.
Yeah, that's remarkable. I think that this kind of forest for the trees mentality, or this is common in entrepreneurs. This ability to, in this creativity, to see what the market needs, or the broad picture of an idea and how it's gonna be fulfilled, is like a common theme for an entrepreneur. But it seems like, you know from what you're saying, like the technical details and the minutia of looking at financials, and kind of really grilling down and executing on some of those details, is I could see how that would be a challenge for me for sure. It sounds really hard.
It is, but that's the hallmark of being a warrior. You take those challenges, you break them down into the small parts, you figure out what you need to do, and you conquer them. And for me, it was tough, but I did it. I brought in and expanded the team.
That's awesome. That's really interesting to hear about. Um, yeah, so I wanted to get into just a couple topics on the. I know this whole conversation's been about professional development, but usually towards the end of the interview, we kind of hit on more recommendations for professionals. So all that to preface the question, what do you see as somebody who is a serial entrepreneur? What do you see as meaningful trends in business? You could speak to fire and life safety, or just business more broadly. What do you see as kind of trends for people to be aware of right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first trend is happening as we speak, and it's evolving and changing. That is, what is pre-COVID, COVID, and then post-COVID look like? I imagine when you have changes, like you take everything that's in perfect order, you put it in a box and you shake it up. Sometimes the stuff on top drops to the bottom. Sometimes the stuff on the bottom goes to the top. Sometimes things move around. So take advantage of what the new COVID and post-COVID world looks like and look for opportunities there. The second thing is the beauty now of what we're doing, which is being able to talk to each other and not be in front of each other. That is tremendous. We've never experienced anything like that in the history of our country, and really our economy for that matter. It used to cost me thousands of dollars in 2 to 3 days to have a meeting over in the West Coast. Now I can do it just by clicking a button and going on a Zoom call. So look at the opportunities that are created there. The shopping, the way that we consume data and the consume product has changed now and moved more towards online, which really opens up the opportunities and lowers the barrier of entry because You don't have to go out and buy a building and lease a space to do business. You can literally just open up your iPhone and create an Amazon account or an eBay store and just start selling stuff. It's incredible. So lots of opportunities out there. Be creative. Stuff that maybe you looked at a couple of years ago and it just wasn't ready. Maybe now's the time to revisit it and to look at them and to try to find that out. The other thing that I'd like to offer for your listeners is we're putting together a warrior framework training. This is going to be a 90-day course where we're going to take you through the warrior attributes step by step by step and teach you how to apply those to business. It's going to be really designed for people that are starting a business. Maybe they have a small business, they want to scale it. It could be somebody in corporate America or somebody in the fire service that wants to kind of move up to that next rank. But we're going to really dive deep into how to handle adversity, tackle adversity, hold you accountable through a series of coursework and also one-on-one calls with me where we're going to be going over the warrior. And that can be found on my website, warriorentrepreneurbook.com. And all you got to do is just fill out the contact us section there with your information, and we can get you information on taking the pre-assessment for the warrior framework.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like an interesting opportunity for somebody who uh, is having trouble getting going and needs a little bit of a tutorial on the right mentality for getting the job done. Um, yeah, the last question, Zach. What kind of? It sounds like that last one was pretty good, but what other kind of resources would you recommend to professional? Where do you like to go and do research and get information about business or professional development?
So obviously, what we're doing right now is a tremendous new resource, and that's just podcasting. There's some great podcasts that are out there. Listen to them, digest them, share those with other people. The other thing is there's a lot of really great tools that are out there that can help you. Two of my absolute favorite tools. One is a website called Fiverr, Fiverr. What makes Fiverr so incredible is that you can get really agency quality material from website design to whiteboard videos to um, infographics at a really, really inexpensive cost. It's a pretty tremendous platform where people can bid off of that. The other one is a company called Got Print, GOT Print. Um, Tremendous tool for printing that is significantly cheaper than virtually anything else that I've found out there for printing, because that can really those prices add up, not just from a business card, but to putting together flyers, to banners, to whatever else is out there.
Awesome. Well, I think that we have run the gambit here, Zach. Where can people find out about the book or follow you on social media?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is usually the best way for social media. Zachary L. Green. You can always email me at zacharylgreen@gmail.com. Again, I encourage everyone to go on to the website warriorentrepreneurbook.com. I am offering a special for your podcast listeners that if they type in the coupon code podcast 2021, again, podcast 2021, they can get the book for 50% off. And also there they can sign up to see if they are eligible for the Warrior framework and take the assessment intake tool that we have, which is a amazing 20-question questionnaire that was put together by a Special Forces intelligence officer to assess your warrior traits. You'll get a free report as a result of that, and if you score high enough, you'll be eligible to attend that warrior framework training.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for your time, Zach. And yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Have a great day. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Don't forget that fire protection and life safety is serious business. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are by no means a professional consultation or a codes and standards interpretation. Be sure to contact a licensed professional if you are getting involved with fire protection and or life safety. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.